Are you thinking of moving to Kingsland, Georgia? Well, buckle up, because for today's video, I'm going to cover the top 5 pros and top 5 cons of living in Kingsland, Georgia. And when I get to one of these cons, you might just pause packing your bags and reconsider moving altogether. So you definitely don't want to miss that. Let's get into it. The first pro of living in Kingsland, Georgia is the affordability. Kingsland is located just above St. Mary's, all the way down south on the Georgia coast, very close to the Georgia-Florida border. So we do have the opportunity living in Kingsland to have some of the waterways nearby and all sorts of fun coastal stuff. You don't necessarily have beach access in Kingsland. Like I said, you have water access, but not beach access. So with that comes the affordability of being coastal without paying to be in a beach town. You do have a little bit more affordability in terms of living in Kingsland than maybe say St. Simon's Island or Jekyll Island, which are just a short 35-minute drive. Maybe 45 minutes depending on where you're located in Kingsland. But one of the great things about Kingsland is it's really close to Interstate 95. Almost all of our areas here in coastal Georgia that I serve are super close access to 95. So you can get to almost anywhere within a close proximity, say 30-ish minutes. So that is one of the pros, is having that affordability in Kingsland as far as houses go. And there are a lot of different neighborhoods to choose from when considering moving to Kingsland, and a lot of those are new construction options. So if you're someone who is looking for a new construction option, then Kingsland might be a great pick for you. And oftentimes you can nail down a lot of great builder incentives. So it tends to be more affordable in that realm also, because all of your systems are brand new. There's builder warranties, builder incentives as far as closing costs or down payment assistance, and all sort of fun stuff like that. So that is pro number 1. Pro number 2 is the local economy. So Kingsland is actually home to the Kings Bay Naval Submarine Base, which brings tons of jobs every single year, actually like all throughout the year. So we have that constant influx of people coming in and moving to the area, obviously spending money in the area. So that's great for the local economy, but we're also not far, like I just mentioned, from Interstate 95. So it could take you like 40 minutes to get into Jacksonville, maybe 30, like I said, depending on where you are in town. A lot of people choose to work in the city, because something that we'll touch on later for Kingsland as a con is there might not be a ton of work options here aside from the base, but you have that close proximity to Jacksonville, so you're really close to a larger city where you do have access to larger jobs, corporations, things like that, if you're not finding the kind of job that suits your needs in Kingsland. But like I said, we do have the base here, which supplies a large amount of jobs, as well as various other industries here. We do have a hospital and that kind of stuff, so there's some hospitality, and we are close to our neighboring cities like Brunswick and up in St. Simon's Island and Jekyll Island, where there's more opportunity. You've got Flexi up there in Brunswick and larger hospitals. And then of course on the island, there's more opportunity for hospitality if that is the industry that you are in. Okay, and pro number 3 is that it really is a military and family friendly kind of small town feel. So a lot of the schools within Camden County, and I'm not allowed to steer in any way based on schools, so I'm actually just gonna read the facts to you guys, and I'm going to link this down below. Everything that I am going to discuss with you guys is linked down below from niche.com. You can find a lot of great information out there regarding schools, so I can only be a source of the source, so that's what I'm gonna do here. But Kingsland, or Camden County schools, actually ranks number 17 in best school districts in the entire state of Georgia. So that's amazing, and that's Camden County as a whole. So what makes up Camden County is St. Mary's, Kingsland, which we're talking about right now, and then you have another smaller city called Woodbine, and then a really small city called Waverly. So all of those cities all go to Camden County High School. There is one high school in the county, there are 2 middle schools, and then 9 elementary schools. So every single school, based on niche.com, every single school that I just talked about gets an A. some get an A+, some just get a regular A, and some get an A-. So do your research there. But overall, I would say that's really great odds to live anywhere within the county. But I'm talking about Kingsland in particular. And like I said, all of those schools, you know, rank really highly, number 17 school district for this state. Another interesting fact about the schools here in Camden and Kingsland, because the high school is located in Kingsland. So that is huge, and that's one of the reasons why, you know, it's a big kind of family-friendly place, because the sports here are really big. I mean, they are in most places in Georgia, but Camden does a great job with their sports. Go Wildcats! If you have kids that are really into sports, and you're considering Kingsland, Georgia, they're going to have a lot of options here. The rec sports could use some help. So if you coach or, you know, do anything like that, the littles, I have a 7-year-old and she cheers for rec, and I'm helping coach this year, and it's a lot of fun, but they need a little help in the organizational department, and just, I feel like rec is a little bit hard, but you know, there's lots of opportunities out there. Cheer, baseball, blastball, t-ball, basketball, you know, softball, soccer, all the normal kids sports. And then of course, as you get older into middle school and high school, it just gets more and more challenging. Camden County School District ranked number 24 out of 178 for the most diverse school districts in the state of Georgia. Like I said, I'm gonna link everything down below, but my biggest tip if you're moving to this area is to get on Facebook, find a local group. You can always reach out to me. I know which local groups you can join that put out good information and are consistently kind of interacting. So all of my information is here on the screen and down below if you want to know more about what Facebook groups you can join to get plugged in with that information, because honestly, it's one of the best places. Just a quick search on there. I'm sure someone has already asked, like, what are the best neighborhoods, or what do I need to know, you know, that kind of stuff. Because as ethical realtors, we can help a lot, but we cannot steer in any way. So there are certain boundaries and guidelines of things that we can and cannot say. But once we're working together on a one-on-one client relationship, there are definitely ways I can help you and figure out which areas and neighborhoods are going to be a good fit for you based on your lifestyle. Okay, let's move on to pro number 4, and that's just the lifestyle and the amenities. There are a lot of golf courses in our area, and because it's kind of a smaller town and family focused area, there are a lot of playgrounds and parks, and outdoor activities are really large here. So Kingsland is very small, but they do a good job of hosting events and stuff. They'll try to do like second Saturdays downtown, and sometimes they're very popular and sometimes it's a little slow, but they do a good job of trying to do them and doing fall festivals. And Kingsland and St. Mary's do a good job of working together, because both areas, they kind of like, St. Mary's almost wraps around Kingsland, so they're almost one and the same. Together, they do a good job of providing a lot of family-friendly activities and outdoor events and things like that. And then not to mention, you've got Crooked River State Park, where you've got walking trails and quote-unquote hiking, and got the access to the water right there. And then you're not far from St. Mary's, the downtown waterfront, where you can let in if you have a boat, you like to fish, you like to go kayaking. And of course, down in St. Mary's, that is the gateway to Cumberland Island. So you can hop on the ferry and go over and see the wild horses and all of that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you're very close to Jacksonville, you're close to Amelia Island, you're close to St. Simon's, Jekyll. So you're really in a great location to access all of coastal Georgia's amazing amenities and just kind of that slower lifestyle. That's what a lot of my clients really love when they move here, and they're looking forward to the sunshine and the slower pace of life and just small town community feel. Okay, and pro number 5, and we have talked about this, but it is its own pro, and that is just the proximity to Jacksonville. Jacksonville is a huge city, so if you've never been, it's probably like 35 minutes from Kingsland, and it has a ton of options. We love to go to Jacksonville just for day trips, hit up Trader Joe's. There's great restaurants there, but then you also have Topgolf. You've got Jacksonville Town Center, which is a huge outdoor shopping mall. So one of the cons we'll get into a little bit later is that Kingsland doesn't have a ton of shopping, but again, you've got that close proximity to Jacksonville, so you can just hop on I-95 and zip right down there and do most of your shopping there. And then of course, you've got larger concerts that come to Jacksonville, because in coastal Georgia, that is one of the I guess, bigger cons, there's not a large concert venue here. So we get smaller bands and live music, of course, but there's not a concert venue per se. So you're going to Jacksonville or you're going to St. Augustine, which both are not that far. And that's where they do get headliners there. Of course, ViStar Arena hosts a lot of large concerts, and then Daly's Place is an outdoor venue and they have a lot of concerts as well. So that is one of the perks of living in Kingsland, is just that close proximity to a large city. You get to take advantage of the small town living without being in the big city, but still get the access to the big city. And not to mention, you are about 35 minutes to the Jacksonville airport. So if you're someone that likes to travel or you travel a lot for work, you are super close to the Jacksonville airport. So, you know, that proximity to a lot of people is very important. Maybe you have kids or grandkids that are somewhere else. You can hop on a plane pretty quickly, and Jacksonville has a ton of options as far as flights, and it tends to be one of the less expensive options when I compare Jacksonville or Savannah. We tend to choose Jacksonville, and it's a very nice airport. It's not too big, but they do still have a decent amount of options for you to choose from as far as flights. Okay, let's go right into the cons. So I've kind of addressed this already, but one of the cons is that Kingsland, while it's a small town and that is a pro, it is a small town that has a very limited nightlife and entertainment options. So we talked about the pro being outdoor activities and things like that. What happens when it rains or it's way too hot outside, which is often, you know, half the summer? There's just not that many things to do. Going out on the boat, fishing, doing those outdoor activities, going to the, you know, family trunk or treat and all those things, they're super fun. But aside from that, there's really not that much to do. I did see on Facebook the other day that coming soon, hopefully this was real and not some kind of prank on the city of Kingsland, but I did see that they were doing some kind of indoor trampoline park, bouncy house, you know, indoor play fun zone for kids, which would truly be amazing, because like I said, when it's too hot in the summer, our options are like, okay, let's go to the library, you know, and there are other things, but there's just not that much. So if you are a family or just an individual who likes going to different trendy restaurants and museums and going out for a beverage and staying out till 2 a.m., you're not going to find that in Kingsland, okay? So Kingsland does have a really cute coffee shop, Blue Bridge Coffee Shop, and then there's some coffee shops in St. Mary's. But as far as food, I'm going to loop this in there with this one because I probably could have made it its own. Kingsland is not it for food, y'all. It is not it. We live in the northern part of Camden County, and we always go to Brunswick for food, because there's not many options in Kingsland. So in St. Mary's, you have a couple options. There are like your normal fast food restaurant options, and then some chain restaurant options. That's just not my family's preference. So in St. Mary's, there's a pizza place that we really like, and then there's Firefly Taco, which is down at the St. Mary's waterfront. But it kind of takes a long time to get to the St. Mary's waterfront. You know, a long time, I mean like 20 minutes, maybe 20 to 30 minutes, depending on where you are in Kingsland. Take that for what you will, but there's not a ton of food options in Kingsland, not a ton of fun, trendy, you know, things to do. Like you're not going to a different coffee shop and museum and market every single Saturday. Just keep that in mind if that's something that you're looking for, that you may find Kingsland a little bit limited, but that's where you really lean on that pro of like, okay, I can take a day trip to Jacksonville, get something totally different, or Amelia Island, or even Yulee, Florida. Like you're close to Yulee, that's a small town, but they've got more options than Kingsland. That leads me into con number 2, and that is the weather and the climate. Now, this is also a very big pro. A lot of people that I get that move down here, they are so excited for the warm weather, for long growing seasons as far as gardening, intense sun, and all that fun stuff. But the weather and the climate can be a con for some people, because if you are not used to Georgia's hot, humid summers that are very long, they are longer than the traditional summer of May, June, July, right? Like August is really when we get into like that peak hot seasons. You know, if you're not used to Georgia's hot, humid weather, then it can be a bit of an adjustment for you. And with that weather and that heat and that humidity come a lot of bugs. So in Kingsland, we do have a lot of bugs. We have gnats, we have mosquitoes. I'm sure you, if you're doing your research about Kingsland, probably read about them, but that is something that you need to know, especially when you call me as your realtor and we start house hunting. One thing that I really express to a lot of my clients is, hey, you're gonna want a screened-in porch, especially if you're the type of person that likes to sit outside and drink your coffee in the morning on the porch. You're going to want it to be screened in like 9 times out of 10. You know, we do get breaks from the bugs, you know, so I won't scare you too much, but they are a very real thing here. And I've grown up in Georgia my whole life, so I'm kind of used to it, and you do get used to it, but the bugs are a big deal. So going to soccer games, football games, anywhere near the marsh, you're going to want to lather up with bug spray. As you start looking at homes, you'll want to make sure that you have a screened-in porch, and a portable fan will be your best friend when you're here in the summertime. So you tell me down below, is that a pro or a con for you? Is the weather, the hot Georgia summers, is that a pro or a con? I want to know. All right, and that leads me into con number 3, and that's the seasonal allergies. Because Kingsland is a very lush, beautiful, outdoorsy place, we have tons of trees. You are going, and trees, and in particular, we have a lot of oak trees and we have a lot of pine trees. And with a lot of pine trees come pollen. So oftentimes, you know, it's about March, and just wham, the beginning of March, you are going to get railed with seasonal allergies. Now, seasonal allergies don't affect everyone, but I will tell you, we used to live in Brunswick, and I don't really say like in the city, like we just lived in the town of Brunswick, and I've never had seasonal allergies. We moved out to North Camden, kind of like in the woods amongst all the trees, pine trees, oak trees, every kind of tree. My seasonal allergies the first week of March are just insane. And like I said, I've never had allergies in my life. So that is definitely a con. If you get really bad allergies, you're going to want to prepare ahead of time, ahead of March, because you will get hit in March. Some people get hit later in the summer too, and then again in the fall. So do your research on the seasonal allergies here and the pollen count. But one of the pros is that it's such a beautiful outdoorsy place, and all of the trees are gorgeous, but the con is the downside of seasonal allergies. Okay, and the next con number 4, is limited healthcare options. So Kingsland does have a hospital. Well, it's Camden County. I don't actually know if it's in Kingsland or St. Mary's by the address. Like I said, I kind of intermix the two cities, but they do have a hospital. It does have an ER, but a lot of if you need more specialized care, a lot of your care is either going to be up in Brunswick or in Jacksonville. So it is a con that there aren't a ton of specialized healthcare options right there in Kingsland, but it's also kind of expected because it's such a small town. You know, so the fact that they do have a hospital and a working ER is actually really big for around here, because if you're any further north than Kingsland, then you may be closer to the Brunswick Hospital, and the Brunswick Hospital services a lot of the surrounding areas. So to actually have one right there in your town is kind of a big deal. And it is a sister campus, the Southeast Georgia Health System. It is the sister, or like the secondary campus to the one in Brunswick. So oftentimes you may get the referral to go up to Brunswick, whether it's a scan or something, and they don't have that machine in Kingsland, then they may send you to Brunswick. And a lot of times the doctors kind of bounce back and forth between the two locations. So that is something to consider. But with that, you do have Jacksonville very close. So you can always just, you know, do your specialized care in Jacksonville, which has a ton of state-of-the-art facilities. You know, Mayo Clinic is a huge clinic down there. We actually had to go, sadly, after my husband went through cancer recently, and we went down to Mayo Clinic, and it is beautiful. It is like a hotel there. It's amazing. They're so kind and nice. And he did all his treatments in Brunswick. And we were at the Camden location for some, you know, like interim beginning stuff. But anyway, if you need more super specialized care, you might start off at Camden and then be referred out to one of the other local areas. Okay, and lastly, con number 5 is the risk of flooding and hurricanes and tropical storms. So obviously being coastal, right above Florida, right on the Georgia's beautiful coast, you always have the risk of flooding, hurricanes, and tropical storms. Now, a lot of the areas of Kingsland, I'm gonna link the flood map down below, because I've mentioned in some of my other videos, our waterways do kind of do this since we have a lot of intracoastal and marshlands. They kind of, you know, the rivers go all throughout. So not as easy to say like, oh, this area of Kingsland, you're not going to have to worry about flooding. This area of Kingsland, you're going to want to steer clear of. But if you just look on the map and you see where the water is, you're going to kind of understand, you know, those flood zones a little bit better. So I'm going to link that down below. And once again, once you call me and we're working together as a client, that's one thing that I always talk about, if that's an important factor to you, because it does change your buying power if you're in a flood zone, because you have to, your lender has to factor that in to your payment, your monthly mortgage, that flood insurance. So it does change your buying power a little bit. So you want to be aware of that. But like I said, not every area in Kingsland, not every home requires you to carry flood insurance. Now, is it a good idea? Probably, but not every area is going to require it. So that is just going to come back to a personal decision whether you decide to carry it or not. So if you want to have a more one-on-one conversation about the actual risk of flood and hurricanes and tropical storms and what that may look like for you and your family, I'm going to link all my information down in the description box below. And my name's Cassie with Horizon Realty. And I help individuals and families just like you relocate right here to coastal Georgia every single day. So whether you're coming to work at Kings Bay or you're just looking for a slower pace of life, I would love to connect with you. Seriously, I love talking to you guys. I love hearing your stories, where you're coming from, what you're coming down here for, and what you're most looking forward to. So if you want to know more about living in Kingsland, Georgia, I put together an entire playlist just for you. You can binge watch the whole thing and then call me when you're done and I'll help you house hunt. So be sure to like and subscribe to this video so that I can keep making helpful content for you guys. And again, reach out. All my information is down in the description box below.